The following session was recorded in Seal, Alabama, May 2014, and is presented by Greg Fisher. Character qualities.
This morning we want to talk about character qualities. And character qualities class are one of the 5 major components of the the personal studies for new Christians, and it's something that the students will study from shortly after coming into the program all the way through the program. And so we want to talk about what the character quality class is, what it consists of, and how students actually study the character qualities. So if you take a look in your notebook today, I have copied portions of the character quality manual into the notebook so we can refer to some of this. But first of all, I want to just show you a character quality. There are 49 different character qualities in the manual. And let's see if I can actually, well, here we can look at character quality number 2. Each character quality consists of these different components. It has the title, in this case obedience. It has the opposite quality, willfulness or disobedience. It has a definition of that character quality. And then there are some questions that help you get a better understanding of that particular character quality. And also there are scripture verses that go along with that character quality. There might be one verse or there might be 2 verses. Each one is a little bit different. And we have 49 different character qualities. It's not the intention that our students study all 49. There's no particular order in which they study these character qualities. It primarily goes by needs we see in the student's life, or maybe needs that they see in their life. And typically, it's 2 to 3 character qualities per month that they'll be studying. So you can't go through 49 in a year at that pace. And so that's a typical character quality. We have a number of them here in our notebook. Here's the character quality neatness. This looks like a pretty easy one. Look at how short the definition is, and a very short verse with it. Some of your students will be looking for the very easy ones to do, and they'll put them on a list of qualities they'd like to study. And so you have to use discernment to see if that's really what they need. Nothing wrong with doing a short one like that, but again, as we've been talking here the last few days, personal application is what we really focus on with studying the character qualities. So let's take a look at the method of study. So we will page down here a little bit. This thing likes to jump around. Oh, here we go. I can go a little bit at a time. All right. There are 8 steps for someone to study the character quality. And as a student is doing a character quality, we ask them to write these particular steps, the answers to each of these steps, on their own sheet of paper. There's no particular form to fill out while they're doing the character quality. There is a checklist, and I've given each of you a copy of the checklist. And so as they complete each step in studying the character quality, they do raise their flag and ask a teacher to come over and take a look at that completed step. And the teacher then will initial that they've completed that step. And so they need to do that before they go on to the next step. But there's no particular form. They can write it on their own paper. So let's go through these steps so that we can understand what they're all doing. The first one is to read, no, that's not it, on a sheet of paper. You see that? Copy the character quality name, its opposite quality, the definition of the quality, and the scripture that goes with it. And we ask them to read the questions. And that's all they have to do for step 1. That's pretty easy, isn't it? You just copy it down. You copy the character quality name, opposite quality, definition, and the scripture. And then they raise their flag. Teacher comes over, takes a look, and initials it on the checklist. And it's time to go on to step 2. Now, step 2 is recalling. They think back over the past few days, weeks, or months and recall a time when you could have used this character quality but didn't. If you have a hard time thinking of a situation, try to remember when you used the opposite quality. And so they describe that situation, tell what happened, what you did and what happened. What kinds of feelings did you experience before, during, and after that situation? And what were the results of your actions or reactions in that situation? So they're just thinking of a time where they could have really used this character quality, and they didn't use it. And that's all there is to step 2. And again, put the flag up, have the teacher come and sign, and they move on to step 3. Step 3 is involved in is memorization. So here we'll bring this up. Memorize the definition of the character quality. Take a quiz on the name of the character quality, the name of the opposite quality, and the definition. The name of the character quality, the opposite quality, and the definition. And typically we do that as an oral quiz. It doesn't have to be a written quiz. They memorize that, put the flag up saying, I'm ready for step 3. They hand you their character quality manual so you can check it as they give you that information. And orally they tell you the name, opposite quality, and the definition. And if they get it right, you check it off on the list, and that's step 3. Pretty easy so far, right? Step 4 is review. So remember what they wrote about in step 2, what had happened in the past and where they didn't use the quality. So this time they're looking back at that situation to see how they could have used this quality. And so they're pretending they've used the quality this time and talking about how that situation would have been different if they would have used that character quality. How would you have acted? What different thoughts and actions would you have used? How might other people involved have reacted? How would this new response of yours have changed the results of what happened afterwards? So they're seeing how this character quality can help them in their lives, or could have helped them in the past. That's step 4. Again, what's the next thing they do when they finish step 4? Raise your flag. Thank you. Raise your flag. And the teacher can come over and sign that. Step 5 is another memorization step. This time they're memorizing the scripture that goes with the character quality. So we're adding one more thing. The question comes up, what if there's 2 scriptures? Should they memorize both? Typically, yes. If you're having someone that's having a lot of difficulty with memorization, you might want to make an exception. And that's up to you. But typically we have a memorize, if there's 2 scriptures there, memorize both of them. And these aren't to set personal application goals. These are scriptures that go with this character quality. The goals in this particular quality are, and in this particular study, have to do with the character quality themselves. So they memorize that, and again, it's another oral quiz, and it's not just on the scripture, but it's on all of these components. The definition, the name, the opposite quality, definition, and the scripture verses. So they take another oral quiz. And that's step 5. Put the flag up, have the teacher come and sign after they take the oral quiz. And now step 6. And this is the personal application part of it. Apply. So here they're listing 3 or 4 examples of how they could use this character quality in their daily activities. Very similar to what we just talked about with scripture memorization, where they are setting goals and how they can apply this to their lives, looking for a place to put it into practice in the next few days. And they're going to write these personal application goals. Again, meeting those same marks of a good personal application goal: simple, specific, it helps you, it's meaningful, all of these marks that we looked at yesterday. And this is the part that takes longer. It might take a little while to write these goals, and then they need to have the teacher come over and take a look at it. And they might need to rewrite the goals or be more specific, or it still needs some work, whatever it might be. Just as with scripture memorization class and character qualities class, we typically choose one of the goals that they're going to work on to actually complete, to finish the character quality study. The same is true with scripture memorization. They might write 3 goals. We have them choose one. I've had times where I've looked at the students' goals and said, you know what? These goals are a little weak, but if you put goal 1 and 2 together, I think you have a really good goal there. And let's have you work on these 2 together. So you have that kind of flexibility with what you're doing there. If the students have difficulty figuring out what kind of goal, I sometimes refer them back to the questions with the character quality. Say, well, why don't you read through those questions again? Or maybe consider the opposite quality. Maybe that'll help you come up with a goal. Or even the scripture verses that go with it. These scriptures are there for a reason. Maybe they can give you some ideas of how you can apply this truth to your life. So there's many different ways to consider it in coming up with goals. So then, after you choose a goal with the student that they're going to work on, then they need to take a few days to do that. Now, here's a little difference in opinion. I remember one time I was teaching on setting goals this was in the Czech Republic, at Teen Challenge there. And they typically would have their students work on a goal for 2 weeks. And I said, wow, I never heard of that before. And they said, well, we want to make sure it becomes a part of their life and not just something they do very quickly. And they said, you Americans, you're always so fast with everything. And it's like, well, that's true. So they had a point, and I've seen that different places. I've seen some centers say, hey, take 10 days to work on this goal, take 3 days to work on the goal. So there's a difference of opinion and philosophy with what to do with the personal application goals. A student can be working on multiple personal application goals at the same time. They might be working on scripture memorization. They might be working on the character quality. They're memorizing things for group studies. I mean, that can get really complicated. So I don't have an answer to that. I mean, the way we approached it in our center is that we usually gave them 2 or 3 days to work on that goal. Some goals might require a longer period of time according to how they write the goal. If they're going to do something over a period of 5 days, obviously they need to do that for 5 days. So it depends on how they write that goal too. But it's certainly something to consider, thinking about taking a longer period of time and trying to let that particular action become part of their life, that character quality, that truth from that scripture verse, whatever it is. So that would depend on you and your philosophy there in your classroom. I just wanted to throw that out for thought. How about, I know many of you are using personal studies. How long do you typically have your students work on their goal before they are complete?
We do 2 to 3 days.
2 to 3 days?
Or longer.
Or longer?
Yeah,
okay.
depending on what goal, but no less than 2 days.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes they'll just do something very quickly and say, well, okay, I'm done. No, that's missing the point. Right. Anyone else? Yes, Barbara.
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Well, to complete.
Character quality? So, do you ask them to take 2 weeks to work on it, or?
No, we have special time in the schedule each week where they totally focus on the character quality, but they can work on it during the study halls at other times. And it usually takes them about 2 weeks to do everything.
To do a character quality. That's typical.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and that's why you don't want to add a lot of character qualities to a learning contract. We'll talk about that more when we talk about writing contracts, but you want to give the student time to, we don't want to rush the students through this material. We want, some will want to be in a hurry, but we want them to, apply this to their life, not just something else to add to the memory bank. How many definitions do you have in your mind? No, are you actually working on putting this into practice? So there's kind of a tension there. How much do we want them to learn, or how much do we want them to apply? We need to, and it depends on what we're stressing in our center too. I've seen some centers, they're proud that they have their students memorize all 49 character qualities. It's like, well, I don't know if that's good or not. I would tend to say no. I would rather see them working on developing these qualities in their life than just something to memorize. All right, number 7 is analyze. List any problems you've encountered while you're trying to work on this. That isn't a major step. It just gives an opportunity for the teacher and the student to talk about it. How's it going? What's happening? And step 8 is the final test. And I think it jumps here. Get back. Step 8 is the final test. Now, the test here in the actual instruction says just to write out the name of the character quality, opposite, and the definition. In our center, we went beyond that and made a test form very similar to the final test form from scripture memorization. So here they're writing the character quality name, the opposite quality, they're writing the definition, the scripture verse or verses. And here we ask them to write what goal did you complete for step 6. And also answer these questions. What did you do? When did you do it? Who was involved? How did they react? You'll see this in your notes, I believe. And what did you learn from studying this character quality? So we felt like there needed to be a little more of a report here on what took place when they were doing this character quality. And again, just like the scripture memorization, write a prayer to God, thank Him for helping you with this, with your study. So that's how we complete character qualities with step 8, is that final exam. And so that is the typical way to study a character quality. Question?
So are we allowed to copy these and
Absolutely.
use these at our center?
I can give it to you or email it to you.
Okay, great.
Sure. And actually, it's on iTeen Challenge too. Yeah, you can download it from iTeen Challenge in the personal studies section. Did you have a question? Okay. So that's the typical study. Now, just like scripture memorization class, there are special projects that can be added to this as well. And I don't think I have, yes, I don't have that on here. If you take a look at the student manual for character qualities class, you'll see special projects on page 9. And there are multiple projects, personal goal evaluation. Project 3, Bible study for character qualities, create a character quality reminder, Bible character study, interviews, Project 6, Project 7, daily journal. So that is entirely up to you as the teacher when you're assigning the character quality, if you want to give a special project. I know some teachers have used them because they felt like the student really needed extra help on this particular area, and so let's also assign a project with it. The student might finish the character quality, and you say, you know, I want to give you this special project. So you're certainly welcome to add a project to it, even after they finish step 8. I had a question recently as to, well, what if the student still has a huge problem in that particular area after they finish the character quality? Can you give it to them again? I don't see any particular problem with that. You know, or give them some special projects pertaining to it so that they can, you know, do further study. Maybe one of these Bible character studies or something like that. I went to one center and I asked if, do you use character qualities in your classes here? And they said, character qualities. I said, yeah, you know, like thankfulness, obedience. Oh, you mean the disciplines? And I said, disciplines? And he said, yeah, we get those for discipline when we're in trouble. And I said, huh. Well, they're really not designed that way. I mean, I guess that's fine to do that, but it shouldn't be just thought of as for discipline. I mean, it's you know, much more than that. And since we're talking about discipline for a little bit, let me just talk a little bit about that. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that if a student is caught lying. You know, hey, you know, you need to work on the character quality truthfulness. We're going to give, you know, and you can say, you know, we're going to add that to your contract for this month. And in particular, we want you to think about the situation that happened last week, and that's why you're here in my office today. And we want you to use that on step 2 when you're working on this character quality. So that's certainly appropriate, but we don't want character qualities just to be thought of as disciplines. I'd never even heard of that before that particular time. But so that is one use. The personal studies are very flexible in that way. Later on today, we're going to talk about Project 200s, and there's a number of lessons in the 200 series. And I used to use those quite often in dealing with disciplining students. You know, if they had some issues with, you know, not showing respect, I would give them the study Showing Respect, one of the 200 series projects, and say, you know what, I want you to come and see me when you come to the stop points in this thing, and we're going to talk further about this particular lesson. So that can be added to the contract and say, you know, we want to give this to you. And that's, instead of just giving demerits or punishments, you know, let's be positive about our discipline approach here, and we want you to learn from this situation and grow from it. So that's some of the flexibility that you see with personal studies. And I'd prefer that would be added to the contract, working with the teachers in personal studies instead of giving it to them as a separate study, because we can really overwhelm our students when we have counselors giving them studies, we have discipline people giving them studies, we have personal studies teachers giving them studies, and all of a sudden, you know, they got it coming at them from all angles, and it's like, well, I can't do all this. And so they get very frustrated. And so there needs to be communication between the staff members and working. You know, maybe they're getting these extra materials and these are important. Well, okay, let's take a little bit off your contract and maybe move it to the next contract so that you can complete this in the proper time. So getting a little more into contract writing here than character qualities, but I just wanted to mention that. Character qualities. So we talked about the special projects. Do any of you use the special projects regularly when you're assigning character qualities? Yes? You want to tell me about that a little bit? And how do you choose the project?
Well, the PSNC teacher, or we have one right now that's certified, meets with the advisors and talks about what character quality they should have. And then we usually do 2 projects per character quality.
Two projects
Two projects out
with
of
each
here.
character quality.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. But our girls are on different levels, so their contracts last a little bit longer than they last, at least like maybe 3 months at a time. So ours are, we assign 4 character qualities per contract because it's
Okay.
not just a month long.
Okay.
It's different for the teams.
Okay. We'll talk about that more when we talk about contract writing. But you typically do assign 2 projects. Okay. All right. That's interesting. Anybody else use the projects quite a bit? Yes.
Maybe not quite a bit, but if it's a quality that they really need to get a hold of, you know, then I'll give them more projects. I like the interview one, but they're all good. But
Right.
I tend to use that.
Okay,
one,
that's
so.
great. I like the reminder one too, where they create a reminder for that character quality. I think that's a really good a good project. Do you typically let your students choose what character qualities they're working on? No? Does anybody do that? We'll talk about that when we talk about writing contracts, but one of the things that we typically did is ask for a list of 5 character qualities that they're interested in working on prior to writing the contract. Now, we didn't always, I mean, the teacher writing the contract would look at that list and possibly choose from that list, or the teacher still had the freedom to choose from, you know, other character qualities. But we wanted the students' input on what they were interested in working on, and so many times, you know, they certainly have some insight into what areas they need strengthening. So that's a great way for allowing our students to have input, and you can do that right from the start. Now, when a student comes into the program, and we talked about this a little in the last few days, typically they start out with lesson 301. I'm here. We looked at that yesterday when we were in the classroom. And then we go into lesson 101, and we looked at that also yesterday. The approach that I used in our center is while students were doing lesson 102 is when we began to introduce character qualities and also the scripture memorization class. Now, we will be talking more about that in some of our other sessions later, but I just wanted to talk about how we introduce the character quality class session to our students. And so what I would do maybe on that day or shortly after they start lesson 102 is say, you know, here's another component to the personal studies class. And I would hand them a manual, and I'd say, I'd like you to read the first part of this manual and to take a look at the character qualities that are in the manual just to see what character quality class is all about. And I might even point to them, you know, the 8 steps and some of these kinds of things, and just give that to them to read. And after they read it, they don't have to read the entire manual, not all 49 character qualities, but just to glance through it and page through to see what some of the titles. There's an index inside the back cover of the manual that shows all of the 49 character qualities. And then I'd assign them their first character quality. So I'd give them a checklist and explain how to use the checklist and have them get out a piece of paper and get them started on that first character quality. And so that's how we would begin. And then maybe the next day or day after, you know, I might introduce them to the scripture memorization class. And so it's the same process. I would give them the student manual so they can read about how this class works, what's all involved. Assign, you know, give them a worksheet, scripture memorization worksheet. Give them their first scripture verse. Make sure they had a Bible and what translation we were asking them to memorize it from, or, you know, that it was an appropriate one. sometimes you find your slowest readers trying to memorize King James, and it can be very difficult sometimes. And then we'd get them started on that scripture memorization class as well. And typically within the first day or so, we're giving them a book to read too, usually The Cross and the Switchblade or something. So within, by the time they're in, partway through lesson 102, they're working on lessons, they're working on personal reading class, character quality class, and also scripture memorization class. So we're introducing these things one thing at a time. We don't want to give it all to them the first day or anything like that, but within, I would say, within the first week or week and a half, we've introduced all these different components. And Bible reading class probably comes in there too. We'll talk about that later as well. Yes?
Is there an outline that's out there that shows us what you just said?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll see that in some of these sessions.
Thank you.
It kind of gives the progression and how that takes place. Yes. So, anything else on character qualities? Yes.
Would it ever be useful, or is it too much to give all the projects to a certain student, or is that not necessary or useful?
Wow. I think it's too much. I've never even considered that. Anybody else have some thoughts on that? Have you done that, or are you just asking? Just asking. Okay. Dave Batty, can we ask you a question? The question came up is it useful to give all of the projects, special projects for a character quality to someone? Is there any reason to do that?
Well, I think one of the reasons for these projects is to move students from a boredom, same rut kind of way of doing something different. And if you have a student that is being under-challenged, I don't know that I would do that every single time, but you might want to do that one time. And again, not as a discipline, but just as a way of challenging them to really dig into this in a deeper way, because that's what the projects do. It gives them more ways to try to connect with that in their daily living. And so some of them, they need that character quality. They need to try to direct that into their life as many different ways as possible, hopefully that some of it will stick. So that would be my only time of thinking of doing that kind of a thing.
But that would be an exception.
Yeah, not the norm.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Okay, wow. All right, well, what we're going to do now is actually study a character quality. One of the requirements for teacher certification is that you complete a character quality, all 8 steps, and that you turn that in when you're applying for your certification. So you need to get a clean sheet of paper and choose a character quality and start doing those steps. And what I want you to do as you're studying that is not to just go from step to step, but just as a student would do, you need to have someone check your steps and initial it off on the checklist. And so I'd like you to go to each other to do that. So you'll get teacher practice with this as well. And so it'll turn to one of your classmates here and ask them to check that step for you, and then you can go on to the next step. So thank you so much for your attention on this.